Hi, welcome back. Today we will venture into a reimagined story of Snow White. For the sake of Snow White. Hope you enjoy. Chapter 1.
Our story unfolds at a funeral. Sina, a young girl with dark hair that reached her shoulders, captivating blue eyes, and a complexion like porcelain, gazes up at the cloudless sky, puzzled. She recalls the ancient tale linking the sorrow of the imperial family to the tears of the heavens, yet today, not a single raindrop falls. A gentleman, his short black hair impeccably styled, stands with poise and announces the prince's duty to bid his final farewell to his mother. As the prince approaches, Sina watches him intently, pondering if he's suppressing his emotions so much that even the weather refuses to shed a tear. With solemnity marking his features, the young prince lays a white lily on his mother's casket. His gaze lingers on her peaceful form, his own dark tresses and deep navy eyes reflecting his melancholy. With her gaze lowered, Sina takes note of the young prince's reserved nature, realizing he rarely expresses himself openly. Her attention drifts ahead, and she recoils at the sight that meets her eyes. The prince is glaring at her, his gaze brimming with animosity and disdain, just as the rain begins to cascade around them. An older woman, her hair a warm shade of brown, gestures to Sina, suggesting they seek shelter under their umbrella. But as she turns towards Sina, the girl suddenly stumbles and collapses into her arms. The princess has collapsed, the woman cries out for assistance. The older gentleman swiftly calls for a man named Tae, and his attendant promptly acknowledges the urgent command. With her vision blurring, Princess Sina can only watch helplessly as the young prince stands before her, his anger palpable, while she rests limply in the woman's embrace. In that fleeting moment of vulnerability, Sina's mind races, a sudden realization dawning upon her that she is but a character within the pages of a novel. In the realm of the Snow Empire, where the spirit's blessings abound, ruled the 24th Emperor, Dargan Louis Arthur White Snow. He took the princess of the Rain Kingdom, Kion, as his empress, and together they bore Prince Aiden Hindley and White Snow. Yet, theirs was a union devoid of love, and the emperor found solace in the arms of an ordinary noblewoman named Melissa, who thawed his icy heart. Their union brought forth Princess Narzina Alone White Snow, a child whose ebony locks, sky-blue eyes, and snow-white skin bore all the hallmarks of imperial lineage. Endowed with the special gifts of her bloodline, she even formed a bond with a water spirit in her adulthood, earning her the endearing title of their empire's jewel, and the reputation of the little sun that brightened the empire with her warmth and elemental prowess. Her tale seemed destined for a happily ever after, until fate intervened. On the day of the imperial prince's return from war, bolstered by support from his mother's homeland, he orchestrated a coup, slaying his father, the emperor, and his closest allies. Witnessing this betrayal, Princess Narzina fled the capital, exiled to a distant land. In her banishment, she dedicated herself to aiding the impoverished, quietly resolving to live out her days in solitude. Over time, her altruism earned her the moniker of a saint, but it also caught the attention of her vengeful brother. Prince Aiden tasked his most loyal and formidable knight, Rauves Lucel, with ending his sister's life. Lucel tracked down the princess in her secluded refuge, and as she knelt before him, she pondered her final words, seeking to reach her brother's heart. Meeting the gaze of her assailant's crimson eyes, she uttered, "Rise as a radiant sun and illuminate even the darkest corners of the empire." With a swift stroke of his blade, Lucel extinguished the princess's life. And so, Prince Aiden ascended the throne, stained with the blood of those he had slain. Yet, despite achieving his coveted position, he found himself restless, yearning for something more. Then, like a harbinger of change, a woman with flowing silvery locks entered his life, altering his destiny forever. With that, the tale draws to a close, revealing that Princess Sina was not the protagonist of this narrative. In this story she was not Snow White. Princess Sina awakens abruptly, a solitary tear tracing a path down her cheek, a lingering echo of her haunting dream. Her attendant, a woman with eyes and hair the color of moss, watches her with concern, tears pooling in her own eyes. When Sina inquires about what happened, her attendant, Joy, responds tearfully that after her collapse, she was carried back to her chambers to recuperate. With a hurried call for the imperial physician, Joy rushes out of the room, leaving Sina to ponder her unsettling dream. Sina rises from her bed, the remnants of her dream still lingering in her mind. She clasps her arms tightly around herself, grappling with the fear that she might perish. The thought sends shivers down her spine, but it also ignites a fierce determination within her. With resolve etched on her face, she retrieves pen and paper from her desk, determined to take action. She refuses to accept a future where her brother brings harm to their family, and she vows to prevent any further tragedy while ensuring his happiness. Although the Narzina of the novel held no grudges, Sina realizes that she now understands better. Reflecting on her past actions, Sina acknowledges the pain she inadvertently caused her brother. Her own happiness came at the cost of his loneliness, and her reluctance to bridge the divide between them only fueled his resentment, ultimately transforming him into her greatest adversary. But as Narzina, she resolves not to let history repeat itself. With fervor, she sketches out plans and diagrams, declaring with conviction that she will craft a future where everyone can find solace and joy. Just then, Joy strides over to her, her expression tinged with disappointment. She scolds the princess gently, insisting that she lie back down and cease her restless movements, as the physician will arrive shortly. With an exasperated sigh, she chastises Sina for her persistent doodling, likening her sketches to mold-like drawings. Reluctantly, Sina rises from her chair, heeding Joy's admonition. She inquires about the empress's funeral, and Joy matter-of-factly informs her that it concluded immediately after Sina fainted. This revelation catches Sina off guard, prompting her to question why the proceedings were cut short when there were still formalities to attend to. Joy's reply is simple: the emperor himself made the decision. Is the deceased empress more important than the empire's jewel? She quips, mimicking the emperor's rationale. With a heavy heart, Sina watches Joy, who offers reassurance and advises her to take things easy. Yet, despite Joy's attempts to comfort her, Sina's anxiety mounts. Collapsing to the floor, the whites of her eyes flashing with fear, she frets inwardly that her efforts are already unraveling. A shadow of worry darkens her features as she contemplates whether her fate will be sealed even sooner than it was in the pages of the novel.
Don't you just love it when they shake up classic tales? I'm all for this fresh take on Snow White. Hey, anyone know a manhua that puts a new spin on The Little Mermaid? Anyway, Chapter 2.
Amidst the clutter of her desk, Sina furiously scribbles down her thoughts, her mind whirling with possibilities. But no matter how long she ponders, only 3 potential countermeasures surface. Slamming her pen down in frustration, she declares her plan with unwavering determination. Firstly, she proposes that her father, the king, relinquish the throne to her brother. Secondly, she aims to soften her brother's animosity towards her to prevent him from seeking her demise. In order to achieve that, she has to make enough change that will alter her future. With a dramatic thud on her desk, she acknowledges that if these options were feasible, she wouldn't have met her demise in the novel to begin with. Resting her head wearily on her desk, she groans in frustration. Even if she were to assure her brother of her disinterest in the throne, there's no guarantee he would believe her. Absent-mindedly twirling the pen between her fingers, Sina grapples with the crux of the issue, the emperor's authority over the appointment decision. Despite his love as a father, he remains staunch in his duty as an emperor. To sway him, she realizes that the allies of the princess must also wield influence over the prince's power. It's a daunting task, but one she's determined to see through. Scratching out one of her plans with a decisive stroke of her pen, Sina acknowledges the impossibility of convincing her father at this time. Undeterred, she focuses on her remaining strategies, pondering the feasibility of getting close to her brother so soon after their mother's funeral. The memory of his icy gaze on that fateful day sends a shiver down her spine, rendering her hesitant to even attempt to approach him. With a furrowed brow, she sketches a stick figure holding a stick, the representation of her third plan, ruthless Lucel. She must persuade the knight not to carry out his orders to kill her and instead let her go. Contemplating her options, Sina realizes that keeping Lucel close is essential to monitoring his actions. Even if she were to prevent their encounter or redirect his path, Prince Aiden could simply dispatch another knight to carry out the deed. Thus, her best course of action is to maintain a close watch over Lucel himself. But the question remains, how can she persuade a man of such unwavering loyalty and duty to spare her life? As fatigue sets in from the intensity of her planning, Sina stretches her tired limbs, feeling the weight of her responsibilities pressing upon her. Despite the daunting challenges ahead, she knows that she cannot afford to remain idle. With a determined gaze, she lifts her hand to the mirror, where the reflection of the prince meets her eyes. Inwardly, she muses, with her black hair, white skin, and blue eyes, one might mistake her for the protagonist of the novel for Snow White. But she isn't the only character with these features. Though the gravity of her situation weighs heavily upon her, Sina understands that action is better than inaction. She must find a way to win the sympathy of the silver-haired knight, in the hopes that he will defy his orders and spare her life. Sina gets up from her desk. With a determined stride, she pushes open the ornate golden-lined doors of her lavish bedroom, her expression set with resolve for the tasks that lie ahead. Like the compassionate hunter in the classic tale, she knows that to escape her impending fate, she must embody Snow White. In the opulent dining room, Princess Sina joins her parents, the Emperor and Lady Melissa, for breakfast. Both parents shower her with affection, expressing concern for her health and whether she's well enough to leave her bed rest. Sina manages a weak smile, dark circles evident under her eyes, her hand gently cupping her cheek as she reassures her parents of her well-being. Her father looks at her with paternal concern, recounting how the physician attributed her fainting spell to fatigue. While relieved, he emphasizes the importance of rest for her recovery. Sina gazes at her father, her words stumbling out as she expresses concern for his duties to the empire. With a warm smile, the emperor assures her that he always has time for his beloved daughter. Sina watches with amusement as his attendant theatrically bemoans the emperor's neglect of his responsibilities, a light-hearted moment amidst the weight of their concerns. As her mother expresses concern over her reduced appetite, a maid emerges with a steaming bowl of chicken broth soup, renowned for its rejuvenating properties. Despite its size, Sina agrees to eat it, surprised by the gesture. However, a sudden realization dawns upon her, prompting her to set aside her utensils and broach a topic that has been on her mind. With a clap of her hands, Sina eagerly announces her desire to train with a sword. However, her parents' puzzled expressions betray their confusion at her unexpected request. With a bright smile, she convinces her parents of the benefits of her proposal, all the while harboring a knowing smirk within. She understands that this is the perfect opportunity to draw closer to the silver-haired knight, her plan slowly falling into place. The emperor ponders the proposal, acknowledging its potential benefits for Sina's health and character development as an heir. Casting a thoughtful glance towards the knight standing guard behind the princess, he suggests that he become Sina's instructor. However, Sina vehemently objects, rising abruptly from her chair and banging her hands on the table as she protests. The room falls silent, eyes turning to her in surprise, as she awkwardly stammers out her explanation. Sir Hilton, the knight with auburn hair, comically pouts at her rejection, his dejection evident, while Sina internally apologizes for rejecting him. As father and daughter bicker regarding Sir Hilton's capabilities, Sina insists that his skill level surpasses her beginner status, making him an unsuitable instructor. With a resigned sigh, the emperor concedes, agreeing to find a more suitable knight for Sina's training. However, Sina expresses reluctance to take knights away from their duties of defending the empire and the imperial family, not wanting to intrude on their personal time. Recalling Lucel's unprecedented achievement of becoming a knight at the age of 17, Sina deduces where her future instructor might hail from. Decisively, she proposes the idea of a squire instead, reasoning that a member of the imperial army would be skilled enough and better matched for her needs. The emperor and her mother react with disapproval and scandal, respectively, at her suggestion. Undeterred, Sina argues that it would fulfill her father's suggestion while also providing her with the opportunity to make new friends. Though the emperor insists that an instructor should be an official knight, Sina employs her puppy dog eyes and pleads with her father, saying, "Please, father." The warmth of his daughter's affection softens the emperor's resolve, and he scratches his head in mild bemusement before agreeing to Sina's request, albeit with the condition that she seeks guidance from Sir Hilton in the meantime. Grateful for her father's permission, Sina beams a bright thank you to him, her excitement palpable as she raises her arm in triumph and informs Sir Hilton of their plans to visit the tournament hall after preparing snacks. The atmosphere in the imperial household's dining hall is pleasant and cheerful. Stepping outside into the crisp air, Sina reminisces about her maids dressing her in a frilly blue dress with a ribbon belt, chuckling to herself at the unnecessary change from her earlier attire. Carrying a basket in hand, she frets over the choice of snacks, pies or cookies, seeking Sir Hilton's opinion. His nonchalant assurance that anything from the princess would bring joy elicits a childish pout from Sina, who insists that it's a gift for her future instructor. She huffs off, feeling the pressure to make a good impression on the man who may one day be tasked with ending her life, while a confused Sir Hilton trails behind. Lost in thought, Sina reflects on how little Sir Hilton understands the gravity of her situation when she suddenly halts in her tracks. Sir Hilton, noticing her abrupt stop, looks at her questioningly, only to realize the reason why as he too bows respectfully and adopts a posture of deference. Standing before them is none other than His Royal Highness, Prince Aiden. Sina gulps nervously, her expression betraying her worry as she studies her brother, the very man who will order Lucel to end her life.
Oh no, I bet she wasn't expecting to meet the prince so soon. Can I just say, Sir Hilton is a cutie with that crying face. He looks like a puppy. I'll let him train me for sure. Anyway, Chapter 3.
Sina's heart sinks as she observes her brother, Aiden, looking noticeably thinner, prompting her to worry about his well-being. But before she can even approach him, he strides past her with sweat glistening from his intense training session. Determined to reach out, Sina swiftly turns to call out to him, "Brother," her fingers clutching the hem of his sleeve. Aiden's sharp gaze pierces through her, demanding to know her intentions. Sina looks up at him, her voice falters, with a trembling hand as she struggles to articulate her thoughts.
"What do you think you're doing?"
Clearly annoyed, he coldly repeats his question with a stern voice. She attempts to broach the topic of their mother's coronation ceremony, but her words fail her, leaving her gasping for breath. She wanted to apologize for her mother's actions, but the words elude her grasp. With a heavy heart, she releases her grip on Aiden's sleeve, watching helplessly as he walks away. Concerned, Sir Hilton approaches Sina, his worry evident as he inquires about her well-being. Clutching her arm, Sina's expression reflects her uncertainty as she acknowledges that any attempt to offer condolences to Aiden would likely be misunderstood. Sir Hilton looks at her worriedly, uncertain what to say. Sina offers a meek apology for her words and suggests they continue on their way. As they walk in one direction, Aiden heads in the opposite direction, further widening the emotional distance between them. Amidst the bustling activity of the Squire Tournament Hall, Layla stands mesmerized by the sight of young knights honing their swordsmanship skills. Sir Hilton proudly explains the dedication and hard work of the squires, but his words fall on deaf ears as Sina's attention wanders. Her curious gaze scans the room in search of a particular figure, oblivious to Sir Hilton's speech about noble squires forging bonds of camaraderie and teamwork. Noticing Sina's distraction, Sir Hilton gently inquires if she's looking for something specific, prompting a quiet denial from the princess. However, her search soon comes to an end as her eyes alight upon Rerves Lucel, diligently attending to his training duties. As their eyes meet, a silent exchange ensues, leaving Sina momentarily transfixed by the sight of him. She finds herself captivated by his striking features, dazzling silver hair and fiery red eyes, comparing him to a rare red camellia flower in a field. But as Lucel turns away, breaking the spell, Sina's trance is shattered. She recalls the superstition surrounding red eyes, symbolizing the devil, and the tragic circumstances of Lucel's birth and upbringing. Born with red eyes and his mother's death in childbirth, he was labeled as the harbinger of her demise, condemned to a life of solitude and misunderstanding. As Sina studies the boy, her mind is filled with thoughts of his lonely childhood. Yet, amidst her empathy, a surprising realization dawns upon her. Why should she feel sorry for him when she herself is in need of his sympathy? With a conflicted heart, she tightens her grip on the basket, wrestling with the complexities of her emotions. As Sir Richard hurries towards them, apologizing for his tardiness, Sina waves off his concerns with a bright smile, understanding the busy nature of his duties. With genuine warmth, she hands him the basket of snacks, prompting Sir Richard to express his gratitude and welcome her presence at any time. Turning to the training students, Sir Richard announces a break, courtesy of the princess's thoughtful gesture. As he distributes the snacks, he turns back to Sina, curious about her purpose for visiting. Sir Hilton kindly offers to explain on her behalf, and the two men delve into discussion. Left to her own devices, Sina observes the other squires, her eyes drawn to Lucel standing alone among them. She watches him, fearing he may not appreciate the snacks she brought. In her mind's eye, she envisions him disdainfully discarding them, tears welling up at the imagined rejection. To her relief, Lucel takes a small bite, alleviating her fears. As Sir Richard becomes aware of her intentions, he surveys the squires on the field, prompting Sina to brightly express her desire for a training partner who can also serve as her instructor, helping her improve her stamina. She seeks Sir Richard's recommendations, igniting the curiosity of the other squires who listen in on their conversation. Confident in Sir Richard's recommendation, Sina eagerly awaits his suggestion, fully expecting Lucel to be chosen as her instructor. However, to her dismay, Sir Richard proposes Henry instead, prompting cheers from his peers but a resounding no from Sina. She reaffirms her determination to spar only with the very best, a declaration that cuts through Henry's pride like a knife. Upon hearing the princess's plea, Sir Richard's eyes swiftly shift to Lucel, assessing him with a measured gaze. If it's the best, then Lucel is the best, Sir Richard declares, his tone carrying a note of certainty. Lucel maintains his usual blank expression, betraying little emotion as he awaits Sir Richard's next words. However, before Sir Richard can elaborate further, the princess interjects with an unexpected declaration. Lucel is fine, she blurts out. The silver-haired boy's eyes widen in astonishment, caught off guard by the princess's swift and decisive response. Turning to face the princess, Lucel meets her gaze as she locks eyes with him. Her bright smile and determined expression catch him off guard, a hint of pleasant confusion softening his features. Stammering slightly, his eyes betraying a hint of apprehension, Lucel responds, "No thank you," his words laced with uncertainty. The princess, comically stunned by his unexpected refusal, looks at him with wide eyes, momentarily taken aback by the rejection.
Speaking of snacks, that Lucel sure is one. Also a moment of silence for Henry, whose pride was just murdered in front of his friends. Anyway, Chapter 4.
As Sina envisions Lucel's rejection, she trembles with comedic panic, her mind spinning with imagined scenarios. Lucel, confused by her reaction, averts his gaze in avoidance, unknowingly intensifying Sina's panic. Sensing the tension, Sir Richard intervenes, calling Lucel over and prompting him to join their conversation. As Lucel approaches, his peers murmur and question why he was chosen, casting curious glances in his direction. With polite decorum, Lucel bows before the princess, greeting her respectfully and introducing himself with eyes cast downward. Sina responds with genuine warmth, acknowledging his greeting with a smile. Meanwhile, Sir Richard, adopting a stern demeanor, questions Lucel about his willingness to accept the role of the princess's instructor. Internally panicking, Sina understands that while Lucel may be uncomfortable, this interaction is crucial for her to bridge the gap between them. The boy begins to speak, his voice low and hesitant, but before he can utter another word, the princess, fearing his rejection, blurts out that she won't take up too much of his time, hoping to convince him. Her face lights up with pleading earnestness, her palms pressed together in supplication. Despite his attempts to avert his gaze from the captivating sparkle in her eyes, Lucel finds himself unable to resist her pleading expression and puppy dog eyes. With a meek nod of approval, he reluctantly agrees. Sina's excitement bubbles over, and she clasps Lucel's hands, causing him to flinch in surprise. With a bright and happy smile, she announces her eagerness to work with him, while Lucel looks on, taken aback by her enthusiasm. The two knights observe the scene with differing expressions. Sir Hilton, moved by the touching moment, holds back tears, while Sir Richard appears somewhat bewildered by Hilton's emotional reaction. With Sina's plan set in motion and Lucel reluctantly on board, all that remains is for her to find a way to grow closer to him. We find Sina in one of her imperial lessons, seated before her instructor, David, who is earnestly explaining the status and power of the Snow Empire within the Tay continent. Sina, however, appears only mildly interested in the lesson. Observing her lack of engagement, David's expression turns stern as he emphasizes the importance of her imperial education. He reminds her that these lessons are the foundation for her future role as the son of the empire and highlights the significant progress her brother, the Crown Prince, has already made, outpacing her threefold in advancement. Sina weakly chuckles at David's words, inwardly acknowledging that despite his attempts to goad her into action, she remains disinterested in pursuing the throne. David adjusts his glasses and proceeds with the discussion, delving into the desertification plaguing the Wand Empire over the past 2 centuries. He elaborates on their desperate attempts to address food shortages by encroaching into the Forest of the Spirits, particularly the section bordering the Snow Empire. Despite holding a portion of the forest, it pales in comparison to the Snow Empire's territory, exacerbating their food crisis. David closes the book with a somber tone, highlighting the rise of pillagers who, driven by hunger, have resorted to crossing borders, even infiltrating neighboring realms like the Rain Empire. Sina raises her gaze to her professor, inquiring about the safety of the people by the borders. David reassures her that while he cannot guarantee absolute safety, the guardians of the empire are diligently safeguarding the populace. These guardians, comprised of knights and mercenaries, hail from families with long-standing traditions of service. When Sina mentions the Lucel family, David notes their loss of the guardian title long ago, attributing their retention of noble status partly to Rauves Lucel's valiant efforts in recent conflicts against pillagers. He recalls Lucel's reputation as their demon of winter on the battlefield at only 13 years old. While David has limited knowledge of swords, he expresses concern about Lucel's suitability as Sina's swordsmanship instructor. Later during the day, Sina sits in contemplation, clad in her training attire, beneath the shade of a sprawling tree. Lost in thought, she stares at a dead dragonfly on the ground beside her, pondering the fate of Rauves Lucel from the novel. Just like this dragonfly, his existence simply faded into obscurity due to his lack of meaningful connections with others who could remember him after his passing. With a heavy realization, she acknowledges that he must be aware that death may knock at any time. Suddenly, a soft step interrupts her reverie, and Lucel appears beside her, offering his apologies for his tardiness. Sina looks up at him, noting his downcast eyes and the polite posture he assumes, hands clasped behind his back. She observes his avoidance of eye contact, surmising that he must habitually shun the gaze of others. Rising to her feet, she brushes off her clothes and assures him that his lateness is inconsequential since she arrived early. As she regards him, a pang of sympathy washes over her, prompting introspection on who truly deserves compassion between them. As Lucel stands before her, his gaze averted out of habit, Sina wrestles with conflicting thoughts about his future as the formidable demon of winter. Uncertain of what to make of it all, she resigns herself to the present moment, determined to forge a closer bond with Lucel. With resolve in her voice, she inquires about their plans for the first lesson of the day. Lucel, still avoiding direct eye contact, suggests that since she expressed an interest in sword training for stamina, they should focus on building muscle first. He proposes starting with exercises to lay the foundation for their training. With enthusiasm bubbling inside her, Sina eagerly pumps her fist in the air, expressing her readiness for the challenge ahead. She envisions various training scenarios, from unconventional exercises like running with tires tied to her, to punching rocks, and even imagines herself hilariously buff, her shirt buttons barely containing her newfound strength. Perhaps being stronger could increase her chances of survival. Turning to Lucel, Sina eagerly requests him to give her an order, her eyes shining with anticipation for what lies ahead. The exchange of looks between them is palpable, with Sina eagerly awaiting Lucel's instructions, hanging on his every word as she braces herself for the training to come.
That image of a buff Sina was hilarious. She has such a wild, unhinged, chaotic imagination, and I love it. Chapter 5.
In the tranquil setting of the training grounds, Lucel instructs Sina to start her first task, running 10 laps around the field to assess her stamina. She agrees but wonders what to call her instructor. Opting for Sir Lucel, he informs her that formalities are unnecessary. With a bright smile, Sina insists that she couldn't be informal with her teacher. Lucel avoids her gaze, so she asks him to look at her when they speak. He hesitates, not wanting to make her uncomfortable. Sina compliments his eyes, comparing them to camellia flowers. She smiles and admits that seeing his eyes for the first time, she couldn't help herself but be at awe. Lucel, taken aback, diverts the conversation back to their training. Sina giggles to herself, observing his blushing ears as he walks away. She muses that the color red suits him well. In the castle hallway, Sina, now wearing a blue sailor dress, struggles to walk. As she leans on the walls for support, she feels like she's dying after just 2 laps around the field, imagining what would have happened if she attempted all 10. Upon entering a room, she's met with the stern gaze of Carlos, her imperial lessons teacher, who chides her for once being on time. With a weak chuckle, Sina jokingly asks for a break, claiming her body aches from yesterday's exercise. Carlos protests, and Sina tells him she was joking. Seated at her desk, they commence the day's lesson, delving into the book The Prince, which outlines the duties and responsibilities of a ruler. Carlos initiates discussion on the text, emphasizing the necessity for rulers to exhibit strength, assert power, and even be willing to commit cruel deeds when necessary. Sina sighs to herself, feeling disheartened by Carlos's explanation of what it takes to be a ruler. She never desired to pursue imperial studies, knowing she has no aspirations of becoming a ruler. She questions the necessity for a ruler to be benevolent. Carlos's response, that rulers must only appear benevolent, unsettles her deeply. The idea that a ruler must prioritize practicality and calculation over genuine kindness doesn't sit well with her. Observing her instructor writing on the chalkboard, Sina reflects on her own nature. She realizes that she's inherently forgiving and empathetic, unable to hold grudges or turn a blind eye to others' suffering. This quality extends even to her strained relationship with her brother, Aiden, and her sympathy toward Lucel. Knowing the hardships they faced in the novel, she can't help but wish for their happiness. As she flips through the pages of the book on her desk, Sina grapples with her growing understanding of the traits required of a ruler. With each revelation, she becomes increasingly aware of her own unsuitability for such a position. A while later, Sina wobbles her way in the castle halls. She stubbornly makes her way to the training field, despite Sir Hilton's advice to take a break. He compares her to a newborn fawn, but Sina insists on continuing. She tells him not to follow her as she staggers away, determined not to waste her limited time with Lucel. She's prepared a special bribe for today's session, and she's intent on delivering it. As Sina arrives at the training grounds, she finds Lucel already waiting for her. He greets her and notices her shaky movements, prompting her to apologize for being late and offer an excuse about her classes running late. Lucel looks at her, sensing her struggle, and a hint of guilt crosses his expression. Sina asks if he waited long, and he responds with a brief no. She looks up at him, relieved that he's not avoiding her gaze anymore, interpreting it as him heeding her request from the day before. Eager to start, she asks about the day's lesson. Lucel suggests 2 laps around the field, but seeing her condition, he amends it to just 1 lap. As they begin their training, Lucel advises Sina to let him know if the pace is too fast for her. She tearfully acknowledges this, feeling a pang of sadness that her chance to shine as a star student may have passed. They trudge along the field, and Sina appreciates Lucel's consideration, determined to complete the lap. However, as she runs, her shoe slips, and she falls to the ground. Lucel quickly rushes to her side, asking if she's all right. The embarrassed princess reassures him that she's fine, though she blushes furiously at her sudden mishap. Lucel excuses himself and examines Sina's foot, suggesting they find her a more comfortable pair of shoes. Blushing even more intensely, Sina watches him closely. Lucel excuses himself once more, catching Sina off guard as he swiftly lifts her into his arms. Embarrassment floods over her as she squirms, feeling flustered by the unexpected closeness. Looking up at Lucel's face, she listens as he warns her about the dangers of moving around too hastily.
Seeing them blush so much around each other is just so cute. I'm curious to see how their relationship unfolds in the future. Right? Chapter 6.
Flustered and embarrassed, Sina awkwardly tells Lucel that she can manage to get inside by herself, but Lucel promptly asks if she's able to walk. Sina looks away, quietly admitting that she can't. Lucel then asks if he's allowed to carry her to the castle. Blushing even more intensely, Sina reluctantly agrees with an all right, determined to redeem herself next time for this rude and improper behavior. Suddenly remembering the bag she brought to training, Sina quickly takes out a biscuit from the pouch and offers it to Lucel. He looks at the biscuit, unsure of what to say. Sina interprets his silence as consent, believing that since he's carrying her, his hands are tied. Without hesitation, she shoves the biscuit into his mouth. Lucel is taken aback, stunned by the unexpected action. Sina looks at him with a sense of impending doom, wondering if she's somehow crossed a line. Back inside the castle, the princess sits on the couch while Joy attends to her leg. Sir Hilton stands guard by the door, watching them with concern. Joy scolds Sina, wondering what she did to get such an injury. Sina tries to downplay it, saying the injury isn't that bad, but Joy looks angrily at Sir Hilton, blaming him for allowing the princess to train in the first place. Sir Hilton tries to explain that he tried to stop Sina, but Joy insists that he should have held her back. As Sina watches the two bicker, she feels guilty for Sir Hilton taking the blame. However, she also feels a sense of happiness that she was able to become closer with Lucel thanks to their lessons, even if it ended with her injury. She recalls the image of Lucel munching on the cookies she offered, and she giggles to herself, pleased to have seen such a cute side of him. Joy looks up at the princess, still angry, and asks how she can be laughing at such a situation as she tightens the bandage on Sina's leg. She then gets up and pats her palms clean, noting that the princess's shoes were uncomfortable and worsened her injury. She assures Sina that she will request a more appropriate set of shoes for her. Touched by Joy's concern, Sina looks up at her gratefully. Joy continues, stating that Sina won't be able to train for a week in order to heal properly. The princess tries to plead her case, insisting that she must train every day. However, Joy firmly refuses, and Sina looks to Sir Hilton for support. He avoids her gaze, turning away. Feeling defeated, Sina finally agrees to rest as instructed by Joy. However, she immediately begins to think of another plan. While she can't train with Lucel during her recovery, perhaps she can still visit him and express her gratitude for his assistance, right? A week passes, and an angry princess sits having tea with her mother. She glares at the pleased Joy standing by, recalling how she was locked inside the castle for the whole week, unable to visit Lucel. Finally, her lessons start today, and she can thank him for what he did for her. Lost in thought, her mother calls out to her. Lady Melissa, with a tea in hand, notices her daughter's worn-out look and asks if sword training has been difficult for her. Sina quickly reassures her mother that she's fine and having fun, worried that her mother will tell her to stop if she finds out about her leg. Melissa is relieved that Sina is having fun but expresses concern about whether calling Sina to meet would be intrusive to her busy schedule. Sina hurriedly assures her mother that she's happy to spend tea time with her. With a satisfied smile, Sina comments on how delicious the desserts have been. Lady Melissa mentions that she had a new cupcake made for her daughter since she's been interested in desserts recently. Sina smiles at her mother, inwardly acknowledging that those desserts were only used to bribe Lucel. Taking a bite of the cupcake topped with cream and sliced strawberries, Sina is stunned by the impeccable taste. The fluffy cake has a cloud-like texture, and the cream melts in her mouth. Delighted by the treat, she considers sharing some with Lucel. Her mother happily watches her eat and tells her to take some with her, as the lady's maid hands a basket to Joy. As Sina happily munches on the cupcake, confident that her bribery for the day will be a success, her mother brings up the idea of having it as the main dessert for her upcoming tea party. Sina inquires about the tea party, prompting her mother to explain that since the flowers in the garden are now in full bloom, it marks the start of the social season. Sina's face reflects her anxiety as she wonders how she could have forgotten about it. She realizes that the best way for her to meet the allies in her mother's faction would be through her mother's tea party. While it's too early for her to convince them to side with her brother, it will be the perfect opportunity to get a feel for them first. Realizing this, Sina requests her mother's permission to join the tea party. Melissa is taken aback by her daughter's unexpected enthusiasm but warmly welcomes her to attend. The idea of having her daughter at the tea party fills Melissa with joy, shining so brightly that it almost overwhelms Sina. She tightens her fist, feeling guilty for her ulterior motives behind wanting to attend the party. However, she sees it as the only opportunity to pave the way for a future where they can all live together happily. As Sina walks back to the castle with Joy by her side, she reflects on her next steps after laying the groundwork to convince her father. The thought of repairing her relationship with her brother fills her with apprehension, knowing it's one of her greatest challenges. Sensing her unease, Joy inquires if her foot is still hurting, but Sina dismisses it, insisting she's fine. When Joy presses further, Sina asks aloud, "How can I get closer to someone who doesn't like me?" Joy is taken aback by the question but suggests that Sina could showcase her positive qualities to win them over. Sina wonders what these qualities might be, prompting Joy to highlight her empathy, emphasizing how it can offer solace to those who are suffering silently. Joy's words leave Sina feeling bashful, pondering if her empathy truly alleviates others' pain. Joy gently clarifies that while empathy may not erase their suffering, it can help ease their loneliness. Her reassurance brings a sense of comfort to Sina, who is touched by her sincerity. Accepting the basket from Joy, Sina expresses her gratitude for both the gift and the valuable advice. As Sina walks, her mind swirls with thoughts of bridging the gap with her brother and alleviating his loneliness. However, her intentions are abruptly halted when she unexpectedly collides with him. His gaze burns with anger at the sight of her in training attire, a first for him. Anxiously, she questions if he's returning from training, noting her own session soon. Her brother responds with a dismissive sound and brushes past her. Desperate for a moment of connection, Sina reaches out to him, only to have her hand swatted away as he angrily calls her a peasant.
Damn, he pissed. I know Sina is only trying to be closer to her brother and somehow make amends. But most of the conflict should be on her father for not being a better parent to his grieving son. Chapter 7.
Hearing her brother's harsh words, Sina feels her heart pounding in her chest. It reminds her of a scene from the novel where Narzina struggled to engage in conversation with the prince at this very point in the story. Now experiencing it firsthand, Sina understands the hesitation and fear that Narzina felt. However, she realizes that the reason Narzina avoided the prince wasn't just fear of getting hurt, but also fear of hurting him. Determined not to repeat the same fate as her literary counterpart, Sina resolves to work diligently towards a happier future, no matter how difficult the journey may be. As Sina struggles to complete a lap around the training yard, Lucel's expression fills with concern. She appears pale and on the verge of collapsing, wheezing with each step. Her heart pounds in her chest, and her legs feel like they are about to give out. Finally, she collapses to the ground, defeated. Lucel stops beside her, his own worry evident as he asks if she's okay. Gasping for air, Sina manages to shake her head no. Lucel looks at her with genuine concern, and Sina, trying to lighten the mood, suggests skipping their training altogether. The two sit beneath the shade of a tree, surrounded by a picnic spread that Sina has carefully laid out. She eagerly points out the variety of snacks she's brought, expressing her desire for Lucel to try them all. With a bright smile, she encourages him to dig in, and Lucel graciously accepts, thanking her. Sina watches him closely, feeling a pang of nervousness as she wonders if he'll enjoy the muffins she's prepared. As Lucel hesitates before taking a bite, his face flushed, Sina holds her breath. Relief floods over her as he happily savors the food. Lucel then asks if Sina will also partake in the snacks, but she politely declines, insisting that she's already eaten. With a cheerful tone, she declares that all the snacks are for him. Lucel is left speechless, his cheeks tinged with color, as he continues to indulge in the desserts. Watching him eat with enjoyment, Sina can't help but wonder if this is how her mother feels when she watches Sina enjoy delicious food. With just a few pieces remaining on the plates in front of them, Sina eagerly asks Lucel for his opinion on the snacks. He responds with praise, calling them delicious. Sina's excitement grows as she sits up, eager to hear which snack was his favorite. After a moment of contemplation, Lucel points to a chocolate chip muffin, and Sina happily takes note of his preference. She remarks with a smile that he must have a fondness for sweets, to which Lucel responds with pleasant surprise. He helps himself to another muffin as Sina reflects on how little she knows about him, realizing that the book didn't provide much insight into Lucel's interests. She gazes up at the sky, resolving to offer him gifts with genuine intentions in the future, rather than mere bribes. Closing her eyes, Sina hopes for a future where she can bridge the gap with her brother as she's doing with Lucel, fostering genuine connections. With a polite demeanor, the royal butler approaches Sina, addressing her with proper respect. Sina's curiosity is piqued as she wonders about the reason for his visit, to which he says he has brought good news. With a sense of apprehension, she inquires about the nature of their good news he mentioned. The butler brightly announces that His Majesty, the Emperor, has decreed that starting tomorrow, the princess will be attending their regular imperial meetings. He congratulates her on this advancement, remarking that she is one step closer to becoming the sun of their empire. However, rather than elation, these words leave Sina stunned to her core, her emotion swirling as Lucel watches curiously by her side. On the day of the meeting, tension hangs heavy in the air as the Emperor, flanked by Prince Aiden and Princess Sina, presides over the discussion. Seated around the table are several nobles and secretaries, their expressions grave as they grapple with pressing issues. The topic at hand is the demand from the Wand Empire. They seek to exchange their valuable mana stones for control over the sacred Dryad Forest, a revered place believed to be the realm of spirits. The nobles voice their concerns, arguing among themselves on the importance of mana stones for the empire and fear of yielding to one's demands would lead to the destruction. The debate intensifies as they weigh the potential consequences of acquiescing to one's demands. Some argue that it may only embolden one to make further demands, potentially leading to armed conflict. Sitting amidst the bickering nobles, Sina observes their heated exchange with a sense of dismay. She questions herself on the purpose of such arguments in this setting, where greed and self-interest seem to permeate the air. As one noble, his hair tinged with ash, insists on unwavering resolve, another angrily counters, warning against the perils of war and potential losses. The tension mounts as they trade accusations between each other. Sina feels a growing unease, wishing fervently for the cease of their quarrel. Glancing at her brother, she marvels at his stoic demeanor amidst the chaos, wondering how he manages to endure it all. The Emperor intervenes, commanding the men to cease their argument. He turns to a man with long pink hair tied back in a ponytail, seeking his opinion. The Chancellor responds with a straightforward assessment, warning of the dire consequences of war. He outlines the potential for escalated military expenditures and extensive damage, far surpassing past conflicts. When the Emperor inquires about potential solutions to avert war, the Chancellor suggests that surrendering the forests could reduce the likelihood of immediate conflict by 30%, though a future war remains inevitable within the next decade. Sina listens intently to the Chancellor's words, feeling a sense of unease. In the novel, war would erupt in 2 years, and the forests would remain within the Snow Empire's domain. Sina never left the empire and eventually perished within those very forests. As the nobles continue their discussion, one of them remarks that the two young heirs are still too immature to handle significant responsibilities. Sina's attention sharpens at his words, realizing this as an opportunity to showcase her brother in front of their father. She rises from her seat, declaring her capability to fulfill her duties despite her youth. Sina boldly asserts her readiness to shoulder any responsibility that comes her way, casting a glance towards her brother and speaking on his behalf as well. The prince, his expression darkened, listens to Sina's words. When the Emperor turns to him for confirmation, the prince nods, affirming his readiness to obey any command issued by their father. The Emperor chuckles with pride at his children's display of maturity. Sina settles back into her seat, feeling a sense of accomplishment in bolstering her brother's image. She steals a glance at him, hoping this might be an opportunity for them to grow closer. However, she notices his gaze, seething with anger, directed back at her. Confused by his reaction to her well-intentioned actions, Sina's expression darkens with concern. One of the seated nobles speaks out, praising Sina for her sincere words, and the rest of the assembly chimes in with agreement, commending the princess for her bold statement on her first meeting. Sina listens to their praises, her face reflecting a mix of confusion and realization. She hadn't expected her words to garner such attention, and she now understands that instead of helping her brother, she inadvertently shifted the focus to herself. Her face panicking and confused, she reflected on her actions. Internally, she resolves to rectify the situation and return the spotlight to her brother. Sina raises her hand, eager to speak, but the emperor abruptly announces the end of the meeting. She looks at him in stunned disbelief, panicking internally at how quickly it concluded. As the emperor departs for his next duties, Sina steals a nervous glance at her brother, uncertain of what his reaction will be. In a sudden and cutting tone, he confronts her, expressing his anger that she seemed to have forgotten her place and is now seeking to gain favor in front of others. His seething eyes bore into hers, his hands trembling with anger, as he accuses her of harboring ambitions for the throne after all.
Sina means well, but she really didn't think that through. But anyway, that's it for the first part of this story. If you want updates on the next part, don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe. See you next time.